ladies. Welcome to Yoga Basics episode 3. Today we are going to work on our plank. I know everyone's super excited about that. I can hear you groaning on the other side of your screen. So let's just start with a little bit of a warm up for the shoulders and the spine, and then we will get right to it. So go ahead and come onto your hands and knees. And make sure your wrists are directly under your shoulders, knees under your hips. So you don't want your hands way forward. You don't want your hips popping up or sitting back, but just find that nice neutral spine to begin with. Pull your belly in and up, and we'll just move through a couple of rounds of cat and cow. So inhale, lift the crown of your head, tailbone up to the sky, roll your shoulders back behind you. And then exhale, push out all the air, pull your belly button in towards your spine, bow your head, arch your spine like a Halloween cat. Inhale, lift the crown of your head, tailbone up. Exhale, arch your spine. So really work towards attaching your breath to your movement. So the entire time you're breathing in, your body is moving into this upward position. And the entire time you're breathing out until that very last drop, you're bowing in and pulling up through the center of your spine. So everyone's going to breathe at a slightly different pace. Just don't rush it. You really want to take your time here, slow your breath, start to gain control of it, and keep those movements and the breath matched together. So go ahead and take one more round, one big inhale, one big exhale. And then when you're ready, come back to that neutral spine. So knees under hips, wrists under shoulders, belly pulled in, and no big curve one way or the other in your spine. So from here, we're going to take the right hand and walk it forward about the length of your palm. So that's from the heel of your hand to the tip of your middle finger. You walk that hand forward, lift your left arm up, reach it towards the sky, get a little bit of rotation here. And then as you exhale, slide that arm underneath, bring the left side of your head down onto the mat. Good, so then find your positioning here. Take a couple of deep breaths. If you feel steady, so the tops of your feet are pressing into the floor, that core is still lightly engaged, as long as you feel steady, you can inhale, lift that right arm up towards the sky, and then as you exhale, wrap it around behind you. See if you can pull that right shoulder back any amount, just getting a little bit of rotation through the center of the spine here. And take your 3 big, deep, full breaths. Maybe on each inhale, you find just a little more opening. And then as you exhale, see if you can release into the pose any amount. Places that are unnecessarily tense, see if you can let them go. And then on an inhale, reach that right hand up towards the sky. As you exhale, bring it back to the mat, unwind yourself. Bring your knees out as wide as the mat, and then sit your hips back for a child's pose. So hips to heel, fingertips reaching forward, bring your forehead down to the floor or to a block or a blanket if the floor is not available to you. Take 3 to 5 deep breaths here. So child's pose is a neutralizing position. We're just coming here to reset before we rotate the opposite way. I'm going to use this time to pull my hair back so that you guys can see my face when we're practicing. And then on an inhale, go ahead and start to lift your hips, come back to that tabletop position. Feet directly behind your knees. So when you look back, you should see no toes. Wrists under shoulders, knees under hips, belly pulled in. We're just going to take 3 rounds of cat and cow before we thread the needle on the opposite side. So as you inhale, remember crown of your head, tailbone comes up. As you exhale, bring the center of your spine up towards the sky. 2 more, just like that. And when you finish that 3rd exhale, go ahead and find that neutral spine, belly pulled in, wrists over under shoulders, hips over knees. This time, walk your left hand forward 1 palm length, reach the right arm up, And as you exhale, thread that arm through, bring the right side of your head down to the mat, pull the belly in and up here. And then you can use this left hand to push and get a little bit of leverage to get a little more rotation in that upper back. So you can stay right here. This actually feels really great to me today. My shoulders are extra, extra tight from digging in the garden for the last week. But if you feel steady and you want to take it a little bit further, you can inhale that left arm up. As you exhale, fold it around behind you. See if you can tuck those fingers in that space where your leg and your torso meet. So we call that the hip crease. And then maybe rotate that left shoulder open just a bit more. Couple more breaths here. And then on an inhale, lift that left arm up towards the sky. As you exhale, press yourself back to tabletop. And then knees as wide as the mat, toes together, sit back in that child's pose. Make this one really active. So most of the time when we're in child's pose, we just kind of want to melt into the floor and let the body relax. But for this one, we're going to add a little bit of engagement. So reach your fingertips forward. Keep your hands where they are, glue them to the mat, but then see if you can pull your shoulders back any amount. So again, like I said, my shoulders are super tight right now, and this feels amazing. So I've got a deep stretch right underneath my shoulder blades and up into this area right here, like right in the back of your armpit. One more deep, full breath here. And then as you inhale, go ahead and come back to tabletop. We're gonna do one more upper back stretch before we move into our plank. So I'm gonna find this neutral spine. I'm gonna make sure that my hips are over my knees, and I'm gonna keep them right here. So this one gets tricky. What you don't wanna do is when you start to come forward, bringing your hips forward. That's not what we're doing in this pose. So we're working towards a puppy's pose, or heart melting pose, it's sometimes called. So I'm going to keep my hips stationary, but I'm going to start walking my hands forward and bring my chest down towards the floor. Okay, so it's not the same as a child's pose because my hips are lifted. They're not shifting forward or back. They're staying directly over my knees. So this is an amazing pose. If you sit at a computer a lot or you're hunched over your phone a lot, this is a pose I recommend doing every day. It feels so good, and it's the only thing I've found really that gets into that way upper back area. So just take a couple of deep breaths here. So you can rest your forehead down if that's what's available to you. If your neck feels good, traditionally you would have your chin to the floor, but that's not available for everyone. It's all to do with how your shoulders are built, how your neck is built, and what sort of health your joints are in. So don't feel like you have to have it one way or the other. I switch it up fairly frequently depending on how I feel that day. So just listen to your body. And then to come out very slowly, I'm going to start lifting my chest, walk my hands in slightly, and then just tuck your toes and come up into that downward facing dog. So feet hip distance apart, hands shoulder distance apart. And just take 2 or 3 deep breaths here. So just checking in with all those little points that we went over in that first video. So heels reaching towards the floor. It's irrelevant whether or not they reach. Fingertips spread as wide as they'll go. Hands shoulder distance apart, and your shoulders rotating out and away from your ears, creating space in your neck. Pull that belly in. Make sure you're not bowing your spine. And then on an exhale, come down into that child's pose, knees together, or knees wide, toes together. Let your forehead rest. And just let your arms rest. Melt yourself into the mat. You can reach your hands forward, or I sometimes like to reach mine behind. That's a nice release for my shoulders. It's up to you, your practice. So just taking 2 more deep breaths here in this child's pose. And when you finish that second exhale, come back to your tabletop. So we're gonna move into those planks as promised. So we're gonna start right here, my hands are in the same position for this tabletop, for downward facing dog, for a plank. The only difference is gonna be where I move my hips in space, okay? So I'm gonna move forward just a little bit so I don't end up off the back of the mat here. So fingertips spread wide. My wrists are right under my shoulders. And then I'm gonna step back one foot and the other foot about hip distance for my plank. Got my belly pulled in nice and tight, and I'm creating space across the top of my back. My hips are low but not sagging, so I see this a lot. This isn't an upward dog and it isn't a plank. It's some weird thing in between that's putting a lot of stress on my low back. So make sure that belly is pulled in even as your hips are sort of sinking down and forward. Now, if holding a plank here is too much, you can bring your knees to the mat. I've got this blanket here, so if your knees are sensitive, you can always put your knees on the blanket for a little bit of padding. And then still keeping a straight line from shoulders down to the knees. So again, you don't want to sag forward and you don't want your butt up in the air because your core is not working at all if your butt is sticking up in the air. So go ahead and come down. It is difficult to talk through all this and hold a plank and move. I'm learning. Just haven't demonstrated in so long. So when I teach in classes, I'm walking around giving adjustments and I never am really practicing while I teach. So this is a new skill I'm developing or redeveloping. I did it in the beginning, but I haven't for many years. Okay, so I'm coming back to that tabletop position. And then I'm gonna step back with my left foot and then my right foot. So coming into that plank, okay? Now, notice that I'm not very far forward on my toes. I will come forward when I'm ready to lower down, but for now, I'm pressing out with my heels. I'm engaging my legs. My quadriceps are engaged here. My legs are in it to win it, not just along for the ride. Belly pulled in and up. Now, the most common mistakes I see is this, okay? So if I am putting my butt way up in the air like this, again, it's not a downward dog, it's not a plank, it's something weird in between, and my core isn't really doing any work here, and I'm dumping a lot of weight into my wrists, okay? If you want to take that weight out of your wrist, you really have to engage your core. So what you're doing is pulling all of your weight and strength into your center. So then everything else, that your arms, your legs, your neck, everything that comes off of it has that strong center to work out and away from. So I'm not dumping into my hips, I'm not dumping into my wrists, I'm not collapsing into my shoulders. I am using my core to support all of those things, and the rest are kind of just props and placement to make it optimal. So I've said it a million times, you'll hear me say it in probably every video, there's not a yoga pose that is not a core pose. So these poses where you're like, oh God, my core is shaking and this is so much, these are the ones you want to do to create that strength, to get into those more advanced poses, to advance your practice, and to really support and be safe about every posture that you decide you want to take on. So, coming back to your tabletop again, and there's plenty of ways to get in and out of plank. I'm just going this way because it's very appropriate for beginners. You can stop. You can even kind of do a little halfway here. So maybe you're not quite ready for a full plank, but you don't want to just be on your knees. You want to work a little harder than that. Keep your wrists under your shoulders. Step back with your left foot. Push back with that foot. Engage your core. And then just lift your right leg slightly. You might even just have that knee down and still just be pushing up, trying to find that alignment for your plank, okay? So you might be here. You could switch sides. So I'm putting in a lot of work here, but not quite as much as if I'm hanging out in a full plank, okay? Now, from here, I might lift my hips and come into downward facing dog. That would be one transition out of a plank. I might be in downward facing dog and need to go to plank. So I'm gonna shift forward, and then notice how my shoulders came over my wrists. I'm gonna either scoot my feet back or walk my hands forward so that my shoulders come right back over my wrists. So always being aware of your alignment, okay? So if you've got your wrists forward or back, when they're forward, you're probably putting a little bit more strain on the heels of your hands, on your wrists. If your hands are back too far, I'm putting a lot of extra work down here in the back of my hands, and then also in my shoulders. So you don't want to tear your shoulders apart trying to get a plank. If you're familiar with Ashtanga yoga, or if you come across it at some point, you're doing plank after plank after plank, and chaturanga after chaturanga after chaturanga. If you don't know what that is, we are going to cover it eventually. And it's a lot for your shoulders. But if you are able to really engage your muscles, concentrate on your core at all times, you can do all those things safely and strongly. So we are just going to move in and out of plank and downward dog a couple of times, and then you will be done with this little practice for the day. Easy peasy, right? Okay, so finding that tabletop position, wrists under shoulders, knees under hips. I'm going to step back with my right foot this time because I know I used my left the last few times. So remember, keep those hips low, keep your legs engaged, push back with your heels, push up with the pads of your fingers. You see how there's sort of a slight rounding in my upper back? You want that. So you don't want to be collapsing down here. This is so hard on the shoulders. Keep that engagement. Push up and away from the floor. Keep your belly pulled in. Okay? And then just breathe. So easy, right? I used to have a Spanish teacher. She would give us these huge lines to repeat, and then she just, so easy, right? All right, and then on an exhale, you're gonna go ahead and lift your hips. Find that downward facing dog. Bet you didn't know downward dog was gonna feel really good. But after a plank, it really does. Take a couple of deep breaths here. Rotate those shoulders out and away from your ears. Take a deep breath in. Full breath out. This time as you inhale, shift forward to plank. Check in with your alignment. Make adjustments if you need to. Good. And then exhale back. Downward facing dog. Again, if you need to make adjustments, I usually have to move my feet an inch or two to get from one place to another. Big deep breath here. Inhale, shift forward to plank. Exhale, downward facing dog. Inhale, forward to plank. Push out through your heels, push up through your hands. Hips nice and low. Exhale, back to downward dog. Last time, inhale, forward to plank. Push up through your palms, press back through your heels, in through the belly, forward through the hips. Breathe. Good. And then exhale, downward facing dog. Take a deep breath in, and then we're gonna come all the way down, knees wide, toes together. Sit back in child's pose. Take a couple of deep breaths here. Two more deep, full breaths. And then slowly walk yourself up. Come back to a comfortable seated position. So I like to sit knees together, feet flat, heels together. It's up to you. You can sit cross-legged. You can sit on a cushion if that feels better to you. On an inhale, reach your arms out and up. Really reach through your fingertips. Bring your palms together overhead. As you exhale, turn your hands out. Come all the way down. Inhale, sweep your arms out and up. As you exhale, interlace your fingers, press your palms out and away from you, bow your head, push the center of your spine towards the wall behind you, or the fence if you're outside. Inhale, come all the way up. Exhale, sweep your arms out and down. Let your palms come together in the center. Interlace all your fingers, like the church and the steeple. Leave your first two fingers out. Roll your shoulders down and back. Pull your belly in and up. Keep your chest from bowing forward. And then inhale, watch those pointer fingers with your eyes as you lift up. Second you start to feel your shoulders lift, that's your point to stop. Keep your palms glued together. Keep your gaze up there at those pointer fingers. And then exhale, same thing we just did. Press your palms forward, bow your head. Inhale up. Exhale your arms down. Inhale, bring your right arm across your chest. Cross your left arm over just below the elbow. And then reach those right fingertips over towards the left and pull that right shoulder down and back any amount. If this is enough for you, stay right here. You can also use that left arm to start to raise the right arm up a little bit. So you should be feeling this across the top or the side of your neck, across the top of your shoulder, and maybe even up into that deltoid over there. Just taking some deep breaths here. Go ahead and release your arms out into a T. Same thing, other side. Sweep that left arm across. Bring the right arm up right below the elbow. You don't want to be right on the joint, but right above or below, depending on how you're built and what feels right for you. Reaching those left fingertips over out past the right shoulder and then rolling that left shoulder down and back. Stay right here. Notice if your chest has started to bow forward. Mine kind of did. I lost my core there for a minute, so check in with yours. And then maybe you can reach that right hand up just a little bit. So just changes the stretch slightly. It's going to be a little different for everyone. Keep rolling that left shoulder down and back. One more deep breath in. On the exhale, unwind. Let your hands come down by your sides. Maybe shake them out a little bit. Roll your shoulders back. Roll your shoulders forward. Good. Make any sort of other wigglies you need before we close. And then bring your hands together in front of your heart. Bow your head towards your heart. And just take a moment to thank yourself for getting on your mat today. Thank mind, body, and spirit for everything they do for you each day. And thank all the yogis that have come before us and all who are yet to come after us. Namaste.